Hello everyone, welcome to Code with Femi. I hope you're doing great. In this video, we're going to be looking at SQL crash course. Before we go any further, I would like to say a big thank you to everyone that have subscribed to my channel. I'm so grateful for your support. We are above 1,000 subscribers now, and I'm really grateful for all that you're doing for this channel. For those of you who are new to this channel is actually focused on helping, encouraging aspiring software engineers, and also providing technical tools or technical ways of how a small to medium business can actually grow. So we provide information that can really help you to grow your business. And also I want to mention that if you're actually in the category of you're a graduate, or you're looking for an IT job as a software engineer or a software developer or a database developer or SQL developer, you're actually in the right place. And my hope is that you become great in your career and you excel. So let's go straight into the order of today. We're actually going to be looking at SQL. What is SQL? SQL is actually structured query language, and this is the programming language that you must know for you to be able to develop relational database systems. And in this actual video, we're going to be touching on the basics, like the basic commands that you should know for you to be able to develop your own database system. So let's move into the next slide, which is called, we have something called DDL commands. What is DDL commands? DDL stands for data definition language, and that actually touches the the actual components that you need to set up for you to be able to get going with developing your database system. So what the first command that I would like to touch on is create. Let's switch to the IDE. For those of you who are new to this IDE, this is actually Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. This is the developers edition. It is free. You don't have to pay anything. All you need to do is have a machine, go onto their site and actually download and install it onto your computer, and you can actually do what I'm doing right now. And also just bear in mind that before you can install this, you need to install SQL Server on your computer. And also I will make sure I put the actual links in my description of this video. So let's go straight into it. The first command we want to look at is create. So what is create? How do you use create? So create is actually a command you use to create the database. Also you can use create to create a table. So let's look at that quickly. Or you can also use create to create stored procedures, create views, create functions. You can use it for many things, but I'm just going to show you an example of what create actually does. So the command is create, right? Create. And then the next thing, before we go further, let's just zoom in so we can see clearly. The first thing, so like I said, we want to create a database, right? So create, and then the keyword database, because that is what we want to create now, and then followed by the name of the database that you want to create. So I would call mine SQL crash course, right? And then I can execute this. Once you click on this would actually run this command against your SQL Server to create the database for you. You can use this key, or you can use F5 if you're on Windows. As you can see there, the command has been executed and it has been completed successfully. So if we expand this and let's refresh, you will see there now that we have SQL crash course, right? Yeah, so this is how you create your database. This is the first actual command that you have to write for you to be able to set up your first database. So the next one that I want to do is I want to now create a table within this database, right? So now that we've actually created the database, the next keyword that you want to use is you want to use SQL crash course. And this is because this is actually a new database now that we've actually created. And then we want to say go. So it would actually switch the context to this database for us to be able to create our tables in there. Because if you pay attention to the top part here, it's still referencing master. So pay attention to that, because if you just say create table and the name of your table, which is going to be SQL table, and then write your your different stuff, your different fields in there, it's gonna create it on whatever is set on here. So just to be careful, you want to make sure that you're using the right database. So in our case, we're using SQL crash course, and then we go, and then we actually now create the table. So in here, I just want to put in the fields for my table. So the first thing is the name of your field will be the first thing, or your column will be the first thing you have to specify. What name do you want it to be in that table? And table is what holds the data. This is what holds the data within the database. Okay, so int is the type I want it to have. So I'm saying this is an ID for that table, which is also something I want to make unique. So for me to make it unique, I say primary key. And also I want to make sure that whenever I insert a record, automatically it increments the the actual ID for me. I don't really need to like explicitly insert it myself. So how do you do that? You say identity, and then in bracket you put in the function to seed it. So this is the function to make it start from 1, and then it would seed by 1. Okay, and then the next thing is a comma that you have to put in there. So you have a comma there. Then the next thing you want to do is you want to add another column that you want your your table to have. So let's say name, and then in this scenario you can see that name is actually some sort of like a command that they use within SQL Server. So also avoid using those things, because then you might need to put a square bracket around it, if you want to like do it this way. But in most cases I tried to avoid using like all those reserved names. So let's just call this first name. Okay, so we do away with the square brackets. And voucher is actually saying that this is actually a variable character that you can use, and you can actually specify a length within there to say this is the length of column. So it will only accept a max length of 0 to max length of 50, or you can increase it to whatever, if you feel like their names are going to be much longer, then you can increase it. But for this demo, we're just going to keep it 50. Another thing I want to also specify is that you can specify if whenever we inserting data into this table, we must provide data for first name or not. But first name is actually something that you want to like make sure that they provide. So you say not no. So that actually makes sure that whenever there's a command to insert data into this table, first name is actually also supplied. And then we have middle name, right? Middle name, and then same story, and voucher, and then in there 50. And then because middle name is actually some people don't have middle names, so we can actually just say no. So you can pay attention to not no and no. Not null means that it is required, you must supply it. Null means that it can actually be left blank. You don't really need to supply it whenever you're inserting data into the SQL table. Okay, the next one is you want to do is say last name. Okay, and then same story, and voucher. Let's make this 50 as well, and then in there we just say not null as well. So this says that this is actually not null. As you can see there, we have a table, right? We have a very nice table, and if I open this just for you to be able to see how this is going to happen in action, you can see there that we don't have any tables. Yes, all we have is just all this inbuilt primitive types, but we're just going to focus on the ones we're going to execute now. So when I execute this would actually create this SQL table in the SQL crash course database, this database. Like I said, pay attention to that. Execute, and as you can see, it has created the the table, SQL table, and then I can just refresh this, and you will see there that I have a new table, and you see there. So that's your new table, and that is actually what create really does. Create is actually now you creating, you creating structures in your actual in your database. You're creating a database. You have a command now that actually you can use to create the components within your database. So one of them is your SQL, your table. So now you know how to use the create command, right? Let's move on to the next one, which is alter. So let's go back to this. So we're looking at now alter. So alter, how do you use alter? So now we've actually created, we've created our database, we've actually created SQL table, but for some reason I really don't like the database name, or let me say that, okay, I don't really like I don't like the database name. I really want it to be something else. So how do you use the alter to do that? The alter is actually you now editing or modifying things. You're modifying your data definition, right? So now I want to now alter, so I use the keyword alter as well. So now you would see that I didn't use SQL crash course, and this is because it's already pointed to that, right? But now I need to do this and say use master, because the reason why I need to switch it back to master is because I want to alter this database, right? So let's say go, and now we say alter. So master, and also just to point it out to you guys, master is actually is one of the system databases you have. This is where it stores like configuration settings, like metadatas. So it stores a lot of information in there in terms of your configuration, but we're not going to be touching on that yet. We're just going to be focusing on your basic skills that you need to actually know for you to be able to set up your own database system. So use master would use the the system database called master, and then go, and then alter. So alter would now mean I want to alter the database name, so I'm saying alter database, right? And then what's the name of my database? Is SQL crash course, and then I want to say modify name equals. So yeah, this is where you now put the name of what your database name, your new name should be. So for this one, I'm just going to say SQL crash course part 1. Let's just call it that, okay? And then in some cases you just have to also terminate it if you want to, just to make things much more clean and know where you ended the actual statement. So let's execute this, and as you can see there, it says the database name SQL crash course part 1 has been set. So if I go in there, you can see SQL crash course. Let's refresh. You see that is actually now set to SQL crash course part 1. So another example is we're going to modify this actual SQL table, right? Basically in here you can see that we have we have the ID, we have the first name, we have the middle name, we have the last name, but guess what? We have missed a column. We should actually have a column for when it was actually created, because it's very good to actually keep track of those things. So one of the first things you want to do is you want to make sure that you say use SQL crash course part 1. That's the name of the database we want to use, and say go. And then in here we want to now say alter table, and then we use SQL table, and in here we want to say add. Now we want to say date created, then we say date, then we want to make sure that it's not null. So that means that anytime a table is a record is inserted into this table, then they must make sure that we add a new column. So you can see there where the alter is actually alter is actually playing a role. easy to create a table, and we're gonna use it, further down the line as we go. But for this, let's just keep it to tables and the database. So we've used it with the tables and database. So let's run this command, and in there you see that when I refresh this column, you should have a new column added now. Isn't that amazing? So now you have a nice table and everything is looking nice, right? So the next one we want to touch on is truncate. Some people always like get it confused and be like, oh, I think truncate is actually a DML, which is data manipulation language, and not a DLL. But it is actually a DLL, and the reason why it is a DLL is because, sorry, DDL. The reason why it's a DDL is because when you use truncate, it's not only just deleting the records and resetting the actual primary key index count. What it's actually doing is it's dropping the actual table and recreating the actual table. So that's why it is actually like classified as DDL and not DML. So let's go back in here. So basically, let's say that for instance, in our table, because our table is quite blank for now, you can see there's nothing in there, right? And we really want to just get some data in there first before we can try out truncate. So basically, this is how truncate works. Truncate is actually like this. I'm also going to show it later in my later video, but I just want to show you how it works. Truncate table, SQL table. So once you run this is actually going to drop that table and recreate it. So if I execute this, it's gonna execute and it would have dropped and recreated it. But for us to be able to see truly and truly what is happening is, I would actually go in here. Let's see if I can edit, add some rows in here. I just want to add some blank rows and say, let's say Femi, and say say Otusanya. Let's say Otusanya. Let's say it was created 2021-10-20, and then let's press enter. You see that I have records in there now, right? I'm gonna add one more. Let's just say code with Femi. Then let's say the same story. It was sorry. Let's just do this 2021-10-20, same story, and you can see that I have two records, right? But if you check here, you see that there is actually the problem I had was when I was trying to insert this second record. For some reason the actual insertion, the first one I did, failed, and for some reason that was not inserted, but the DB kept track of that and actually made that 3, okay, which is fine, right? So now this is how truncate works. Okay, let me now say that I'm going to delete the first one. Let's just delete the first record. So before I actually do this, I just want to delete the first record. Let's delete the first record in that table, right? We're still gonna touch on delete properly, but for now I just want to like delete from SQL table, and then where, always make sure you put in the where, because if you don't put in the where, it's just going to delete the entire stuff. But where id equals 1, I just want to delete this record, this top record, right? Let's delete the top record. So deleting the top record, if I actually go back to that table, you will see there that we have just this single record now, this one, which is just id 3, right? Now let me go back and insert a new record in there. Let's insert a new record in there, or actually let me delete 3 as well. I just want to delete 3 as well, so that the table will be blank. Okay, but this is what I want you to understand. When I actually like run this, you can see it's blank, right? But when I try to insert a record in here, it's not gonna start my primary key from 1 anymore. It's gonna start from the last ID that was actually used on this table. The actual SQL Server keeps track of that. So in here, if I say Femi O 2021-10-20, press enter, you will see that the ID now is now what? 4, right? So this tells me that the delete is actually just deleting the actual record in that table. It's not really doing any dropping, it's not touching that table. But now this is how truncate works. Truncate would actually it would drop that table and recreate it for you. And so all your data will be lost in that table. Just bear that in mind. Anytime you use truncate, you're saying that you want to recreate this table without any of the existing data. So it's quite a dangerous command. Just bear that in mind. So don't use it like loosely. Just be sure you know what you're doing when you use truncate. So when I click on truncate, right, this is now gonna like drop that table inside of here, this SQL table, and recreate it. So now if I now go and say, let's just let's remove this. I just want to remove that, and then let me now go back and say I want to add a record in there. I just want to add a new record. Okay, in there I was Femi O Busoya, and then date created is 2021-10-20. Enter. But check here, you can see that the actual stuff has been set back to 1. So that is why truncate is actually a DDL command and not a DML command, because it's not only just manipulating the data, it's actually also affecting the data definition. Just bear that in mind. So the final one that I want to touch on this video would be is drop. So that's the final one we're going to be looking at, and this is a command you actually execute to drop, to remove your table, or to remove a database, or to remove a stored proc, or whatever it is you want to like delete forever from your database system. So let's switch back. So how do we write the command for this? We actually use drop. So the first thing we want to do is want to drop the SQL table. And then you can see right there, that is just what you need as the command. And I can actually just run this, or I can also say drop database if I want to drop both database and both table and database. I can actually write it like this. But now I really don't want to do this together. I want to do it one at a time so that you can see it in action. So let's just refresh this just to be able to see. You can see that we have SQL table, and then if I click on execute, so this is another trick. When you alight a command, when you click on execute, that is the only command that will be executed against your SQL Server. So execute, and see there that it says commands completed successfully. That means that this table is gone. So let's refresh. You see there that guy is gone. Like, we don't have a table anymore. So our database is tableless now. So now the next one is drop database SQL crash part 1, right? So now let's say in a scenario where you now want to drop this, you can use master, because remember, because we're dropping that actual table, we just have to ensure that we're using a different database before we can drop it, right? But there are cases where you might run into problems, which is basically for some reason this actual command would not run. It will tell you that the database is actually currently in use. Okay, so and I will show you a actual trick that we actually use to to get around this. So you can see there, it's actually like telling it's currently in use, and this is because maybe something else is using it. So there are 2 ways you can actually drop a database that I know of. You can right click on it here and actually go to delete. So if you go to delete, you need to just ensure that you click on this, close existing connections, and click on OK, and that will drop that table in that database for you. Okay, that's one of the options that you have. Let's actually do that now so you can see. I'll just say OK, and you can see that the actual DB now is like it's gone, right? That's one example. The other example that you might want to do is, I'm just going to create the database again because I want to show you this example. We're creating that database again so that I can show you the other example. So refresh. In there we have that one. So in that scenario, what you want to do is you want to set this to a single user before you actually delete or drop it, right? So this is how you write it. You say alter database, and then you say set single underscore user with rollback immediate. That is what we use as a command. And then once you run this, and then you can now say go, then you can now say drop database SQL crash course part 1. So with this is gonna drop the table. As you can see there, happy days. If I go here and refresh, you see that is actually gone. So those are the two key ways you can actually drop your database. I hope you guys actually enjoyed this session, and in the next video we're going to be looking at DML commands. That is what we're going to be focusing on. This one, that is what we're going to talk on